Have you ever noticed that at work, the people who are always available are often the most undervalued? It sounds paradoxical, but it's true. Excessive availability, the habit of always saying yes, responding instantly, and constantly explaining yourself slowly, weakens how you're perceived. And most people don't even notice it happening. Research discussed in Harvard Business Review has pointed out that professionals who maintain a certain degree of distance are more often seen as competent and confident. And this isn't limited to work. The same dynamic applies to personal relationships. Think of someone you know who never sets boundaries, always reachable, always ready to help, even when exhausted. Over time, people stop asking whether they can. They simply expect that this person will always be there. A simple example. Imagine that every time a friend messages you, you reply within seconds. At first, they may appreciate it, but soon it becomes the norm. And if you delay even once, expectations shift, sometimes into demands. What once was goodwill quietly turns into obligation. This is where the balance breaks. You're always present, yet gradually taken less seriously, listened to less, considered less. Why? Because constant availability creates familiarity. And familiarity, when it isn't moderated, often leads to devaluation. The human brain associates rarity with value. If you're always there, always reachable, your presence stops feeling special. And here's the key point. Excessive availability is rarely a sign of empathy. Much more often, it's a sign of missing boundaries. And when boundaries are absent, people slowly lose their space, their voice, and their internal compass. But how do you change this without appearing cold or distant? The answer lies in understanding the difference between being present and being available. This distinction completely reshapes how relationships function. Presence carries weight. It means your words, and even your silence, matter. Excessive availability, on the other hand, means always being at someone's disposal, even when it costs you time, energy, and emotional stability. Picture two people in a meeting. One speaks rarely, but when they do, everyone listens. Calm, precise, grounded. The other tries to please everyone, talks too much, interrupts, over-explains, fills every silence. Who do you remember after the meeting ends? Presence doesn't require constant effort. It means occupying your place confidently, without justification. Constant availability often signals a hunger for approval, and that subtly erodes respect. Studies on social perception consistently show that people who are strategically reserved tend to command greater respect. They are not always present, but when they appear, they leave an impression. What does this mean in practice? You don't have to reply to every message immediately. You don't need to accept every invitation. You don't have to participate in every conversation. Sometimes, selective absence is just as powerful as presence. When you learn to be memorable without being everywhere, you begin to shape how others perceive you. The desire to be liked feels harmless. After all, who doesn't want to be accepted, valued, appreciated? But when that desire turns into a need, it becomes an emotional trap, quietly pushing you into the background. Many people live by avoiding conflict, saying yes when they want to say no, smiling to keep the peace while burning out inside. That isn't empathy. It's self-abandonment. Take Anna's story. She was a highly capable professional, well-liked by everyone at work. But behind the praise was constant exhaustion. She took on extra tasks, accepted unrealistic deadlines, and never refused. Over time, she became the person who fixes everything. Not because she was respected, but because people knew she wouldn't say no. The result was burnout, forced time off, and a long recovery. This pattern even has a name: the fawn response, a stress response where a person tries to please others to feel safe. It's unconscious, and far more common than many realize. Psychological literature frequently points out that people stuck in this pattern struggle with boundaries and are more likely to fall into unhealthy relational dynamics. The most dangerous part isn't just exhaustion. It's that, while living for approval, you slowly lose contact with yourself. You stop hearing what you want, what you need, what you feel. You begin living through others' expectations and gradually lose agency over your own life. But the good news is this: it can be changed. Silence, when used deliberately, can be a powerful form of emotional authority. In a world where everyone rushes to explain, justify, and defend themselves, the person who knows when to remain silent stands out. Take Raphael's case. During a tense meeting, he was unfairly accused of a mistake he hadn't made. Everyone expected him to react immediately, to defend himself. Instead, he stayed silent. He listened, he observed, and 2 days later, he responded with concrete data that fully disproved the claim. The outcome? He was promoted, not just because he was right, but because he demonstrated restraint, emotional intelligence, and strategic thinking. This isn't passivity, it's timing. Well-placed silence communicates maturity, confidence, and control, and it often destabilizes those trying to provoke you. Research on conflict dynamics suggests that people who avoid impulsive reactions are perceived as more competent and reliable. Silence creates space, it disrupts expectations, and sometimes it changes the entire situation. Here's the core idea. When you don't react impulsively, you signal that you can't be manipulated. You don't hand over your energy to every provocation, and this reshapes how people interact with you. Many believe that setting boundaries means long explanations, spelling out rules, declaring expectations. In reality, the most respected boundaries are often set quietly through consistent behavior. Consider Julia. She used to answer work messages at all hours, nights, weekends. One day, without announcements or explanations, she simply stopped. She replied only during work hours. At first, people were confused. Then they adjusted. She didn't argue. She didn't justify. She changed her behavior. Effective boundaries aren't negotiated. They're embodied. This applies everywhere. You don't owe explanations for every absence, refusal, or change in distance. When your actions are steady and consistent, people understand, even if they don't agree. Psychological data consistently shows that people with clear, stable boundaries experience less chronic stress and greater life satisfaction. Boundaries protect you. They filter what reaches you, and more importantly, what remains in your life. And this matters. Boundaries aren't about controlling others. They exist to protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being. There is a subtle but crucial distinction between self-control and suppression. Knowing where that line lies can determine whether you preserve inner strength or slowly erode it. Self-control means choosing how to respond. Suppression means choking your emotions out of fear of disapproval. The difference lies in intention and in consequences. Think of Marcus. For years, he took pride in never losing his temper. Calm at work, quiet at home, restrained among friends. But internally, resentment accumulated. One day, he exploded over something trivial. Everyone was shocked because the cause wasn't the incident. It was everything he had never expressed. Suppressing emotions isn't strength, it's a break. And over time, you pay for it with anxiety, insomnia, and emotional exhaustion. Research in psychosomatic psychology has linked chronic emotional suppression to higher levels of stress-related symptoms. True self-control comes from clarity. You recognize what you feel, you acknowledge the emotion, but you choose the right moment and the right way to act. You don't pretend you're unaffected, you decide how to engage. This is emotional intelligence in action, and it's freeing. because you're no longer a prisoner of impulse or of guilt. You gain space for mature action, without silence born of fear and without outbursts driven by accumulation. Being selective doesn't make you cold, it makes you grounded. And mastering this balance can fundamentally change how you relate to the world. Many people fear appearing distant when they begin setting boundaries. But what actually repels others isn't firmness, it's insecurity disguised as availability. When you give yourself away without limits, share everything with everyone, you become predictable. And excessive predictability often leads to devaluation. Take Carla. She was extremely open, sharing personal details with colleagues, relatives, even acquaintances. She believed it created closeness. Instead, people stopped respecting her right to silence. Demands increased, and overwhelm followed. When Carla became more selective, her relationships became healthier and deeper. Selectivity is a form of respect for yourself and for your emotional space. It means knowing who deserves access, where your energy belongs, and what truly merits your presence. Studies in social psychology suggest that people with smaller but more authentic social circles report greater emotional stability and well-being. Less breadth, more depth. This isn't about cutting people off, it's about filtering access. Not everyone needs to know what you feel, think, or plan. When you consciously choose what to reveal and to whom, you regain control over your emotional reality. Saying no is one of the simplest and most difficult acts, especially when the opportunity looks good on the surface but doesn't align with your values. Remember Enrique. He was offered a promotion with higher pay, but also heavier workload, greater pressure, and no added support. He wanted growth, but understood the cost. After reflection, he declined. Not from a lack of ambition, but from clarity. He chose to wait for something aligned with what he was actually building. Many people accept offers that don't serve them, simply to avoid disappointment or to appear grateful. But saying yes to what drains or disrespects you is a direct path to exhaustion. Research consistently links difficulty saying no with higher stress, anxiety, and lowered self-worth. Every forced yes is a small betrayal of your real needs. Saying no when necessary is an act of self-preservation. It acknowledges that your energy is finite, your time is valuable, and your well-being isn't currency to trade for approval or status. And interestingly, when you learn to say no with calm firmness and respect, people begin taking you more seriously. Pressure decreases. Requests become clearer. Respect often increases. Many live on autopilot, reacting to everything, answering instantly, justifying themselves even when it isn't required. This isn't just exhausting, it strips you of agency. Look at Philippe. Whenever criticized, he immediately responded. If someone complained, he defended himself. If there was disagreement, he rushed to explain. Over time, he realized his sense of stability depended entirely on others' reactions. So he changed. He listened more, reacted less, introduced a pause before responding, and everything shifted. Conversations became balanced. His presence felt grounded. He was seen as someone with inner stability, not a reactive participant. Here is the principle. When you react impulsively, you hand over emotional control. When you choose how and when to respond, you reclaim it. Leadership psychology consistently shows that those who remain calm under pressure are perceived as more effective and trustworthy, not only at work, but in all relationships. The shift from reactivity to strategy begins with small choices. You don't have to answer everything right away. You can breathe, reflect, and respond consciously. Sometimes the wisest response is silence. Other times, it's delay. This doesn't happen overnight, but it begins with awareness. You are not required to react to everything. You are here to choose your battles, protect your energy, and live deliberately. Healthy unavailability is one of the most powerful ways to strengthen self-worth. Because when you stop adjusting yourself to be liked, you begin living from your own value, not from external approval. Think of Larissa. For years, she believed she had to be constantly available to maintain friendships. Immediate replies, constant explanations, always participating, even when she didn't want to, until burnout hit. Then she set a new boundary, being present only when she genuinely chose to be. Presence by choice, not fear. The result was immediate. Some people drifted away. Others began respecting her space. And most importantly, she began respecting herself. This is the direct effect of conscious unavailability. You stop attracting relationships built on need and begin cultivating those based on authenticity. Those who remain value your presence, even when it isn't constant. Research on emotional autonomy suggests that people who don't contort themselves to fit others' expectations experience greater respect and relational satisfaction. They don't beg for space, they create it. And this shift doesn't only change external relationships, it transforms how you see yourself. When you realize that you don't need to be understood to have value, you gain freedom. When you accept that not every criticism requires a response, you gain peace. When you see that explanation isn't always maturity, you begin to choose silence intentionally. To be unavailable means to be selective about what reaches you. It's the recognition that your time, energy, and emotional capacity are valuable resources, and they do not need to be accessible to everyone. Thank you for watching. I hope this gave you something to reflect on. Until next time.